Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Adam. I'm operations manager for consultancy and training at Soccertech. And it's my passion for training that got me involved in the apprenticeship side of it that I'm going to be discussing, but more of a story of how I got there in the first place, because it wasn't thrust on me, we want to do apprenticeships, how are we going to do them? It was more a case of a natural progression of how it went. So I think if I do that, what I want to focus on during this presentation, if you like, firstly, what were we trying to address at Soccertech in the first place that led us down this apprenticeship kind of route? What was it that we needed to overcome? What was available? What is available? What isn't available critically for part of this? How useful was what was available in the first place? And were there any alternatives? And that's kind of how I got involved, was on the alternative stage. And that's the story I'm going to try and tell. So firstly, then, what were the challenges? Why did this even come about? And the first one has been discussed quite a lot already today. The resource challenges that are ubiquitous across the industry. We have it at Soccertech, just as many people I've spoken to have had it. Where are they coming from? We're all dipping into the same limited pool. People that are just rotating around different consultancies. You might get the odd good one that stays with you for a while, and then we're just on a timeline waiting for them to get old enough, and then we'd have to replace them anyway. So it's where we getting the resources from. That was the first challenge that we looked at. Then how do we get newbies into the industry, if you like? The way it was put was, how do we make asbestos sexy? We don't seem to be attracting anybody in. And if you liken it to other trades, bricklayers, plumbers, electricians, they've got no problem. People are very, very well aware from a very young age that there's an industry that they can go into. They can get the qualification relatively easily through an apprenticeship or go into work at a company scheme. They're aware of it. And yet, if I speak to every one of you, and I have last night and in other occasions, how did you get into this industry? Most of us have the same answer. We just, I fell into it. Oh, yeah, 20 years ago, I thought, this will fill the gap until I find out what I want to do. It's very rare you come across someone that said, well, at school, I thought, yes, I'm going to be an asbestos surveyor analyst one day. That's going to be the route. Might even get to PM at one day. None of us did. So why is that? Why aren't we attracting anybody in? What are we missing that other industries aren't missing, seemingly? Retention is a big one. What are we doing wrong with the retention? There was a presentation given on it on this stage last year by, I think Ben did it. Not just people leaving the industry, but it's just swapping back and forth, as I just said. Why is that? What can we do differently? And that was something we were tasked with. What is there that we can use at Soccertech that if we find a good one, or we get someone in, we train them, we've given them the qualifications and they're getting on with it, what can we do to stop their head being turned to other consultancies or outside? And the non-fee earning challenges of bringing in trainees. It is a burden. Day rates are going down or at least stagnating. Wages, the demands are getting quite ridiculous. Some of the people that say they're leaving and they quote us what they're being offered, they're either being lied to or this company's doing things that we can't do. So what can we do when we're trying to attract new people in to try and streamline that process to get them the qualification, get them authorized, and get the quality up in a nice streamlined 6-month, if you like, period of time to offset the burden of the non-fee earning element for a trainee. So the question was asked, can apprenticeships solve these issues? Is that something we can lean on? We've already mentioned electricians, bricklayers, they have their apprenticeships, seem to work, so why can't we? So what do they offer? What is it an apprenticeship can give us as opposed to an in-house training regime, for example? They offer standardized learning modules based on key skills, knowledge, and behaviors that end up in an accredited qualification. It's a level 3 or a level 5 or a level 7 qualification. It's often noted that we're professionals, and I've had conversations with people of, is a 3-day 402 course and a couple of site audits, is that professional? Is there another element that we could add to give it that extra professionalism that maybe is required? Sam mentioned earlier on that maybe it's going to become a requirement for surveying to be UCAS accredited. We know that at the moment it's not. And again, those same people would be professionals in our eyes. Another attractive element, apprenticeships paid for by levies. Socotec pay into a levy. It was attractive to us to think, well, we could get an apprenticeship. Wouldn't cost us anything. We pay into the levy anyway. We can use that up. That gives us additional benefits then when it comes to things like tenders, the 5% club that we're a member of. So the levies was an attractive proposition when it came to apprenticeships. Bit of a contentious one, but the apprenticeship is a lot cheaper wage-wise than trainees. There's a moral argument to that. I don't think anybody would really be comfortable paying £6.40 an hour for somebody working for them, and that's the apprenticeship rate. And it would also be really difficult to attract people to your company if you were saying, yep, you can come and join us on £6.40. But as a trainee, there is that element that you can offset the trainee wage in comparison. And lastly, I think significantly, and something I keep returning to because of the challenges that we first mentioned, is the marketing opportunity. We thought if there's an apprenticeship available that we can use and we can advertise, maybe we would attract more people. Do we have an opportunity to put posters up in colleges or distribute leaflets saying Socotec apprenticeship? Come and join us. There's your career path. It is an attractive job. It is a good career. Lots of us fell into it. We're still here. So there must be something good that we're doing in the industry that keeps us here. So how do we get that people in through the door and then sell them on what we saw when we first joined? Right. Then we had an apprenticeship. So we used the lab technician apprenticeship scheme. And I'll get into why we use the lab one a bit later. So first of all, we took on 4 apprentices for the level 3 laboratory technician apprenticeship. These were all based up in our northern lab. So I wasn't directly involved in their coming and doing the apprenticeship. I've subsequently found out what the experience was. Some nice emails that were sent to me. We chose 4 because we had resource demands in that region for lab technicians and budgetary restraints that we had at the time of year we needed them. Decided the apprenticeship was the best way to bring them in. Subsequently, 3 of them left before completion of the apprenticeship anyway. One within 6 months, the rest within the first year of the apprenticeship. So we weren't off to a great start as it was on a 24-month program. The remaining apprentice completed the program, but on completion, they couldn't analyze asbestos. The qualification, either the 401, is not included in the apprenticeship scheme. So it's a fundamental flaw straight away. But it meant that because of the apprenticeship and the way it was run and getting them in, we didn't have any guarantee that the people would be actually any good at the asbestos work that we required of them. Very good lab technicians as far as the apprenticeship was concerned, not very good asbestos analysts, which is why we got them in the first place. We don't need lab technicians, we need bulk analysts. So that was quite an issue. The 24-month program is just too long for them to be sat on an apprenticeship. The large non-fee-earning period as it is, but it was just too long. So summing it all up, Socotec decided apprenticeships are not the way forward. They're not fit for purpose in their current state, certainly not the lab technician one. So we're just going to abandon apprenticeships going forward. That's not something we were going to do. So the limitations then that we identified about apprenticeships during this, firstly, we use the lab technician because there is no asbestos specific apprenticeship currently switched on. The asbestos analyst and asbestos surveying apprenticeships were switched off in 2023. So we didn't have an option to even use them in the first place. Hence we went to the lab. They didn't include the asbestos qualifications. These had to be funded separately. Does mean they're not very attractive to us as an industry. If you don't get the qualification on the back of an apprenticeship, why would you bother? You can just bring them in-house, give them in-house training, include the qualification, bypass the apprenticeship altogether. Limitation we've already mentioned, apprenticeships have to last 12 months as a minimum. So there was no getting around that barrier. That's a long time for someone to be trapped in an apprenticeship. So that was a barrier to us going forward. And they're a generic syllabus. They're based on key skills, knowledge, and behaviors. But we can't tailor them to what we need out of you. You come and join us. We've got our own systems and procedures. They can take a long time, even for experienced staff coming to join Socotec, for us to get them up to speed. I'm sure we've all had difficulties when we're using these electronic systems. Someone comes in, they've used Teams, you use a different one. it can be a nightmare sometimes. Well, that wasn't how we used to do it. It's getting them back on side. So that's pretty much where I came in. Is there an alternative? With my background in training, it was the apprenticeships are good for what they could be, but they're not there. So what can we do to identify an alternative to the apprenticeship scheme? So I split up our options into 3 different training categories that I thought we should consider for all the challenges we discussed, how to get people in, how to retain staff. So the first one was if there's somebody brand new to the industry, a brand new trainee that comes in, what are we currently doing for somebody that's never had any experience with asbestos before and comes into the company? Then what are we doing for somebody that is experienced in the asbestos industry but is brand new to us as a company? How are we treating them? And existing staff, what are we currently doing in terms of training for those members of staff? What could we do better? So all 3 of them, just realized, sorry, I didn't have them on screen, did I? All 3 of them, we decided they just needed a second look. We needed root and branch approach. What can we do to improve them? So the first one is the one I'm going to focus on the most, because that leads us into the apprenticeships as we come back. So people coming into us, never been in the asbestos industry before, like most of us joined the industry. So took that second look, and the first thing looked at was the onboarding process. The apprenticeship scheme we used had a really good formalized onboarding process. When I looked at ours, we had whoever was in the office that day would greet the person coming in. Hi, I'm so-and-so, fill out the forms, take them around the office for a quick tour. Oh, this is Steve, this is Pam. And then they'd be sat in an office, handing in their documents. That was pretty much the onboarding process we had. Then we looked at the training element itself. There was nothing really formalized. It is tricky with ops demand that it's 2 people jobs. We need a second person on this job. Great, we got a trainee, off you go. So there are benefits to that. You see different sites, you work with different people. What we identified was, because there's no formalized modular learning system, they might go out with someone and do the same thing for 3 weeks in a row. They might come back and they're absolutely brilliant at filling out sample bags, but that's about all they've done for 3 weeks, because there's nothing formalized to say, well, actually, you've passed that module. You're good at writing sample bag. Let's move on to something else you need. So how do we address that? The qualification. It's a fundamental. You can't do the job without it. So what were we doing about that? And we found that what we were doing was we'd bring someone new into the company, as a surveyor, for example. We'd say, right, when's the next 402 that they can do? Oh, it's June. Right, book them in. And then we'd leave it. And we'd let them know, you've got 402 in June. But there was nothing to say, well, let's find out what you actually know. Before we go and send you for this test, what do you know? So we looked at the fail rates, and they were quite high. Higher than they should be for the 402, 403, and 404. And why is that? Probably because we throw them out. They go out on site. We're not really tracking what they're learning. We throw them into the exam, and it's left down to them. Continued then. There was a lack of recognition. Those that passed the 402, they might get a phone call from somebody to say, well done. But that was about it. Upon getting signed off at the end of their authorization period, there was 0. You would just find that the person would turn up and they'd say, oh, I'm lead today, I can do the job. We hadn't done anything formal in the company to recognize. And again, coming to that retention, how do we keep people? Well, one of the ways is to acknowledge that they've done something that should be celebrated. And lastly, something that is unavoidable. There's a risk that once they're qualified, they could leave the business. Everything that we've just discussed wrapped up together meant that risk was higher than it should have been. And maybe that's why we had a problem with retention, because we hadn't addressed the way that we'd actually brought them in and trained them, that other places did look attractive because maybe they offered things that we didn't. And once they had passed the 402, what were we doing to bring them into their development? A lot of the time it found that they were going out, well, you're fee earning now, off you go. Fee earning, fee earning, fee earning. And they were coming to us and saying, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that. Well, if somebody else gets in before they come to you and ask and said, we can offer you that, they're going to have their head turned. So that was what we looked at in terms of what can we do better. So the idea then was to put together this training academy, if you like, that improved on what we were doing. So now anyone joining Soccertech as a new trainee gets an official joining pack. It's like a digital booklet, if you like. Welcome to the company. Here's our values. This is what we do. These are the kind of customers we have. It brings in the onboarding. We've streamlined that and we've formalized it. Now they're now onboarders so that they know the process. We've trained them so that when people come in, they know what to do. We let people know when trainees are going to start so that people that are relevant, stakeholders, are available in the office to be met so that they can have those discussions when they first come in and it's not a name. Ops manager should be here today, but they're out on site. You'll meet them in the next couple of weeks. And it could be a month before they actually meet in person because they've just had a phone call. Hiya, welcome. So we've tried to address that. We streamlined the academy program that we had. We formalized the way that we do the training. So that online digital booklet that they're given has these modules that we took from the apprenticeship, from the knowledge, skills and behavior, so that now when the site work is being carried out, there are different elements that they're learning. And once they're signed off on that and it's verified that they've done that, we can move them on to another element. And they're not just doing the same thing over and over again on site. To assist with that, we decided to highlight mentors, operational staff that we'd had feedback from other trainees that they were really good to be out with, learned a lot from those. Not everybody on site was interested. Lead surveyors that had trainees sometimes would just say, just fill out the sample bags and do everything. Others were a lot more engaging and a lot more personal. So we identified who might be good mentors, and then we got them to come in and ask them, do you want to be a mentor? And trained them to do it. Went through the modules with them. This is how it should look. This is what we'd like you to do. It's a huge challenge because we need quite a lot of them because of the way the work is set up. We can't just keep somebody with the same person because it depends on the work they're doing. We implemented gap analysis as part of their training when they first came in. So now they're not thrown into the 402 on the back of a couple of weeks site training. Now we go through with them personally, legislation. We do gap analysis to understand what elements it is of the exam that they're going to sit that they might struggle with, so that by the time it gets to the 402, they feel confident about going in. We've taken that all the way to having a couple of weeks before the 402, we try and sit down with them and have almost like a mock exam, if you like, go through the different elements that they're going to come across, take the mystery and the fear out of the test. And our pass rate has improved since that. That's been a noticeable difference rather than just go and do the test. We try and aim for those P modules within month 4, if we can, so that we've got that streamlined process. That's why we try and design it that way. Firstly, because if we do get a good candidate, they are good at their job and they do pass their 402, we've got 2 months then to try and align with the audit schedule and get them signed off and out fee earning. But also it gives us an opportunity close to their probationary period to see, are you any good at the job? It gives us that option to say, well, we sent you for 402, didn't pass it, and we can take them back in and see if there's anything we can improve. And that's why we aligned the audit schedule. So we got our technical quality department to get involved with the designing of the training academy so that we could try and make it as streamlined as possible. Just quickly with what we did with the other two pathways that we were looking at. Experienced staff that joined Soccertech, what we identified would be they'd be included in the onboarding process as if they were new anyway, because they're new to us. So they'd have the digital booklets with the values, etc. It just wouldn't have the modules, but it would be aligned to the auditing schedule that we had for them. And we'd also carry out gap analysis on them. As we've discussed, not everybody that comes to you that says they've got 10 years experience means that they are good at their job, unfortunately. It's not a case that we would bring them in, give them gap analysis, and if they weren't good, we'd kick them out. More of if we'd give them gap analysis to see what we could improve. And not just gaps in their knowledge, but in our own procedures and systems as well. So that we had, again, a formal procedure to bring them in and say, this is what we do and how we do it, not just leaving it to site-based and to be honest, problems coming back and being reported to us, and then after the fact trying to sort those out. And as part of this, they got inducted in that training academy that we set up. they get inducted into that. So there's clear development pathways for them. And that mentorship that we set up for staff members as well, that had a bit of an impact, because there's now another route to go. It's not just that everybody has to aspire to be a PM. They can go down the route of mentoring and into training through that. So the training academy that we set up, anybody that comes in from a trainee or experience will get put into the development plan. They've got a clear then development plan that we align to the training academy. And the same for existing staff then. There are clear pathways for them. We've had conversations, discussions with each member of staff as to what it is they would like to do, how we can implement that, and that gets all incorporated into this. We will assist with their development, and we still use in this apprenticeships for the soft skills element. So PMs go through a level 3 learning and management apprenticeship. Operations managers will go through a level 5. We use the apprenticeships for that. So that was what we did. We thought, brilliant. We've kind of done what we need to. And then we took it a bit further and thought, well, let's go back to the challenges we had. We're trying to address retention, but what are we going to do about that attracting? We've got this now and we think it's attractive, but how do we get it out there? And that led us to having conversations with our training provider, Tiro, where we brought them in and said, well, can we make this something sellable, if you like? Can we get it out there? And so we started to have conversations around faux apprenticeships. These were 6-month programs that were aligned with everything we'd done, but now they were a level 3 certificate award. So not the full apprenticeship, but you still got something out of the end of it. Initially, it was because we thought it would be interesting to have a training provider get involved to print the booklets or make everything for us, essentially do the work for us. But they had a much more interesting idea when they proposed, well, we could make this a product for you. We could make this a faux apprenticeship, an asbestos faux apprenticeship for surveying routes, for analytical routes that would have the qualification within it, just like you proposed, have the mentors, the onboarding, everything that we wanted and we built up already. They said they could formalize for us. So that got us really excited because it gave us the opportunity to promote the program, which is what we wanted. That's what we're looking at. This whole thing is, how do we get people through the door? The certificates then, the faux apprenticeships that we were looking at, they would be aligned with these KSBs that existed on the previous apprenticeships anyway. And because of that, the accredited body CAS said they were quite confident they could build it into that certificate for us. Wouldn't be specific to Socotec, which was the second exciting thing. This could be for everybody to use these asbestos faux apprenticeships. And then those conversations just went full circle. We started to ask, well, why don't the asbestos apprenticeships exist? Why did they get switched off? What could we do to get them switched back on? So from swearing off apprenticeships altogether, that's it, we're not going to use them, they're not fit for purpose, we started discussions around where they might sit. And I personally think they could be beneficial. So we are in discussions at Socotec. I know Lucian are involved, Thames Labs, I know ACE are involved, in bringing the apprenticeships back online. We are looking at industry leading them. One of the main problems with apprenticeships and why they got switched off was there wasn't anybody to carry out the endpoint assessments, no experts. That seems daft when we're sitting in a room like we are today and people online to think that there weren't enough experts to carry out the endpoint assessments. But that's what the accredited body said to us. So the hope is that with us getting involved, that could be a thing of the past. They are confident that they can build in the qualification to the apprenticeship. It would have to be the RSPH level 3s because that's a qualification that can actually be built in. But we now have an apprenticeship that had the qualification in it. That would be infinitely more attractive than one that didn't, because it would mean it'd be funded as part of the apprenticeship. And they're also confident that they could take the existing framework that we'd initially discussed and build that into the apprenticeship as well. So they'd be front heavy. So the first 6 months would be very much aligned with getting somebody up to speed, getting them qualified, getting them up to, quality driven, but then fee earning. so that the second half of the apprenticeship was based more around the soft skills element. So they'd be able to fee earn while they were doing the soft skills. They're looking at around 6 hours a week for off the job on the apprenticeship. So it's not a massive commitment, and especially when they're fee earning on the second 6 months, you'd be looking at around 6 hours a week that they technically wouldn't be fee earning, but site work would be part of that. Another element around the discussions we're having is that the endpoint assessment would be site-based, like a site witness audit, rather than a classroom-based audit. Again, aligning more with what we would require if we're going to get the apprenticeships back on. So sum up then what happened. Apprenticeships currently aren't an option to us because they weren't fit for purpose. But this is being addressed, and at present, it feels like they are inevitably going to be switched back on. There's enough of us in the industry involved, and there's enough incentive, seemingly from the providers and the accreditors, to actually get them switched back on. So it does seem like it's inevitable that they will. If that's the case, then we need to ensure that they are fit for purpose. So there's some of us already involved, but I'm sure there'll be opportunity for more of us to get involved so that we make sure if they are switched on, they are fit for us. How do we want them to be assessed? How can we use them? In-house programs, I don't think will ever go away. What we're in discussions to do is to use, for example, an apprenticeship to bring someone in, and then they'd slot into our in-house training to develop, maybe even using the faux apprenticeships if that's something that comes off. But I don't think there's any substitute for an in-house training program currently. We would benefit from something that we can market that gets people through the door. We can make asbestos sexy. It is an attractive proposition to have a vehicle, mobile phone, a laptop, or a tablet. Freedom, really. You know, there's your work, off you go. As long as it gets done, you're home safe. I think we should stress as well the importance of what we do. When I first got into this discussion with the accreditor, that was what was said to me. Well, asbestos isn't sexy. It's just seen as dangerous. But my counter was, well, firefighting is dangerous. And yet everybody seems to think that's a sexy industry. Why can't we be the same? Why can't we attract people the same? It is dangerous, but not if we do it safely. And if we've got the correct apprenticeships that we've built together with the training providers and the accreditors that give them the knowledge, expertise, and qualifications to do it safely, that shouldn't be a barrier to bringing more people into our industry.